So let's take a very thorough regard at our current American presidential friend, who some know as determined, generous Joe, and others know as dangerous genocide Joe. But we're going to see what makes him appeal to such diverse groups of people or not, and how he uses his open throat and the various voices he has available at his disposal to play with the projection field of appearances and reflect back at people exactly what they want to hear him say. As Orson Welles said, the political game is a kind of acting, but it's not lying as long as the performance is reflecting and exalting the cultural ideals of the people. So we're also going to have a look at where his influences come from and his values through his relationships, how his first wife gave him the passion and the drive to first go into politics, how his second wife Jill defines his identity and the role, the type of leader he is, how Kamala Harris really understands him, understands his mind and empowers him on a personal level and generally makes him feel good about himself. How his friendship with Obama and their shared motivation of bringing hope to the people. We'll look at where that comes from. And his enemy, you could say, Trump, we're going to put them up against each other in a battle of the body graphs and see who would win if it worked that way, which of course it doesn't. We're also going to have a look at his relationship with his kids, Hunter, Ashley, kids in general, and the accuracy of the human design system is so incredible that we're also going to see why he loves ice cream so much and going deep on pasta with red sauce. My name is Mauer and I'm a professional human design analyst with a power view in my nodal perspective. So I really enjoy looking at the elections and who's up and down in the power hierarchy, and basically the election game is just a battle for the throat center. Who can grab the most attention, hold it for the longest, shut down everybody else. And it's quite surprising, or not, the number of candidates past and present we've had who've got an open throat. Bill Clinton, and past Obama, of course, currently also Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Very interesting person, and you know, all of them have had issues with their throats and their voices, what comes out of their mouth, because they have no real consistency in the way they speak. But that also gives them the flexibility of being able to speak to such a wide range of people. The thing about the open throat is that in the true self, it acts as a filter. It's actually designed to be very receptive and take in what's being said all around it and filter it and, you know, see what's of value to draw attention to or not. And more importantly, what's not being said, the elephants in the room. And so it's very good when it's working correctly at drawing attention to what needs to be said and is not being said. But in the not self, on the other hand, it has nothing unique to say, and it's simply repeating whatever it's being conditioned through external influences, whether that's its upbringing or current influences who are feeding into it from all these directions. We're gonna look at his different voices and what they're fed by, but basically, you know, being a parrot, a puppet for whoever and whatever is influencing it, and the rest of the conglomerate of the not self nonsense that's inside us and pushing us. People with an open throat, they usually don't know to shut up and listen and take things in before they speak. They're usually just trying to get as much attention as possible, which makes them perfect in a way for somebody to be used as a politician. So let's dive into our dear but damaged Democratic friend. So we can see that not only is his throat open, it's also bridging his wide split. He's got these two aspects of him, that are functioning independently. His mind, pressured, confused mind, trying to analyze what happened in the past. I've got the 47 gate of oppression, right? And it's constantly replaying to me snippets of conversations I had and what I could have said better, or and what it meant, and trying to make sense of all these things. But he doesn't always have an outlet for that, a consistent way of expressing that and connecting it with what he's doing and his sense of identity in the moment. So that puts even more pressure on him in the not self to try and have as much attention and as big a voice as possible. And it's quite an incredible throat. I mean, 9 throat activations. And I can only think of one other person in politics, which is Bill Clinton, who has a voice like that. Even more. I mean, Bill's got 12 activations in his throat. It's basically half of who he is. This ability to speak in so many different ways and be relatable to so many people. And they both share this 4th line of friendliness in their profile. So Joe's not quite on that level. He's missing a tribal voice, which Donald Trump obviously has, the voice of the tribal leader. So Joe, he doesn't have that kind of voice, but he does have 6 collective activations here. So he can speak to the public in general. And more than that, although he's not a 5th line profile, he's got 5 5th line activations in his throat. And the 5th line is a voice of seduction, of projection. I mean, in general, in his design, he's got 8 5th lines, more than any other line. And that gives him this ability, as long as he looks the part, people will project onto him what they expect. And his 4th line personality makes him appear friendly. I mean, that's one of the most common things that people say about him. And combined with his 59, the ability, the power to break through emotional barriers and to achieve a sense of intimacy with people. And combined with his Incarnation cross of Contagion, which whatever he puts his energy into, whatever he's into, whatever he's enthusiastically talking about to his network of political friends and family, and projecting out to the people at large, it's very infectious. You know, cross of Contagion people, they get into a new hobby, and before you know it, they've got all their friends into it. There's this drive, there's this very encouraging, warm sort of power in the 14. I mean, it is the gate of power skills, but we'll go into that in a second. But if we also look at his psychological motivation, what drives him is this theme of hope. And what he can do when he's correct or being used correctly is basically bring hope, restore faith to the people in the government. And it's very interesting because we can see exactly the same motivation of hope in Obama, but also in Trump. So in their own way, they're all trying to make the people believe that things can be better in the future. But what's really funny is that none of these voices are connected to anything coming from him. So where are his opinions and facts and details and direction coming from? He's got absolutely no logical definition here. And as a 4th line being, we're looking at his influences coming most strongly from his close, intimate family, friends, relationships. So if we look at his wife, first wife, Neilia, we can see that she completes this channel. She's got the 41, this drive to pursue your dreams and fantasies. And he's got the 30, this burning, clinging fire, this desire to achieve the experience, the greatness that you're dreaming about. And together they form this channel of focused energy. So she was she was the one who really pushed him and gave him the passion to go for it. But then when we look at his second wife, Jill, we can see that she's got the 7, this role of leadership for good or for bad. And the line she's got it in is, again, a 5th line of projection of leadership, the general. If you watched the analysis of my friend and mentor Richard Beaumont about America as a country, you can see that it's a 5th line themed country. So the leaders need to resonate with that. This 5th line quality comes out in the way he speaks. That's very, well, whose authority must be absolute. It's sort of making short statements. It's very rhetorical, military in a way. And so it's good to see that channel defined in a leader. Whether that's used for good or bad is another matter. And the thing about Jill is that she shares this channel of confusion here with Joe, as does Kamala Harris, interestingly. So they all have, they can relate in their way of thinking, basically. But she's got this logical channel from the 17 of a very organized being. And of course, she's a projector. So she's going to be guiding him and controlling him with that 21 gate of control in the ego. You know, she compromises here in this channel of opinions. You can see when one person has this whole channel and the other person has only half, there's no chance that he can win an argument against her. Just absolutely no chance, hands down. And when you have that in a relationship, there's nothing to do but accept that. I have that. My partner, she compromises me here. So I know that I'm never going to be able to convince her to think in a different way than she wants to. And why should I try? I mean, I'm a projector. So, but of course, in the not self, she's going to be even more power hungry than him. Anyway, let's go back to Joe and his profile. The 4th line is a very useful profile in navigating these political networks. We can see that Bill Clinton also had this. It's a line of friendship, of opportunism, and look where he's got it. He's got it in the gate of power skills. Right? So being able to influence his network and use those influences to accumulate and retain power and achieve a position of security financially and in all kinds of ways. And not only that, in the 46, another 4th line, which is about the serendipity of being in the right place at the right time and being discovered, really. The good luck which comes from being in the right place at the right time, leading to recognition. So just perfect. You see a person like that and you know that at some point they're going to be able to take advantage of those kinds of opportunities that come along and be discovered. It's benefited him, but it's also benefited a lot of other people. And this 4th line is also a line of corruption. Now, I'm not saying that's bad. Corruption can be manipulating, say, an unjust law in order to be more ethical. So it's not necessarily a bad thing. And he's also got this ability in this 8th, the gate of contribution, because it's open, this ability to be able to recognize the contributions of others and the acknowledgement of those who lead by example. So he'll have his heroes, the people he believes in, and also the drive to contribute himself and be an example himself, a role model. I mean, he's got so much doubt and confusion up here, and he really just wants to feel good about himself. and be able to make a positive influence on the collective. In his cross, this 30 is a gate of expectations, right? So if you can feed his desire to validate his insecurities, his open ego, give him a voice, and you tell him that's going to make a positive difference in the world, with his 29, he'll say yes to anything. I mean, the 29 can lead to a lot of disease. I mean, it's about commitments, it's about persevering, and that is something that people often say about him, that he knows his why, as Obama said, and he's determined to keep going in his own way, whether you agree with that or not, whether he knows where he's going or not. I mean, he's not logical in any way. He doesn't really understand the consequences of where he's going until afterwards. I mean, this is the human way. It makes him very relatable. We get into things out of expectation and the desire that we're gonna do A and get B as a result, and then we meet reality and the fates, and it doesn't turn out that way. But this 29, if it's got that expectation, it's the disease of saying yes to everything. I mean, in any reading I do with a client, especially with this 29 unconscious in red, he's really got to be careful if we look at this, because it can be the power to persevere that makes no sense at all. You know, it is a line of confusion. First reaction, his first response to anything that corresponds in any way with his expectations and desires is going to be to say yes. So that makes him very easy to manipulate. And with this mind that's disconnected from his energy and his true ability to respond intelligently and say yes or no to things, that will lead him into some, well, troubling situations. And you can see that whenever he's in a situation where he hasn't been prepared with what to say, and he has to rely on his own mind and the lack of logic there, I mean, all kinds of things can come out. What's the outlet of that mind towards the throat is the 43. It's a pure individual, freaky, weird. Sometimes it can make perfect sense, and sometimes no one understands it. And there's a fear of not being understood in there, which I'm sure that Kamala is very good with her individuality at comforting Joe when these sort of gaffes happen. I mean, many of his outbursts, it's a third line, as you can see here, which is trial and error, and many of his errors have been turned into memes, for example.
And why should the voters believe that you can win the national election?
It's a good question. Number one, I was a Democratic caucus. You ever been to a caucus? No, you haven't. You're a lying dog-faced pony soldier. You said you were, but now you got to be honest. I'm going to be honest with you. It was a little bit confusing in Iowa.
Yeah, so for some, that's going to make him appear like an idiot. And for others, they're going to find that relatable and human. I believe him that he heard that phrase somewhere in a film, because this channel is very visual and it's replaying to you things that you've seen and taken in the past. But let's look at his not self. So obviously we've got this open throat that wants a voice, this fear in the 43 of not being understood, and this split which makes him feel incomplete. And the tendency with a wide split is to blame your problems on the world, which is perfect as a president when you're trying to influence the world in general. But this completely open ego, this lack of worthiness, which of course 65% of people have, and is the root of, the advertising industry and heart disease and well, doing things that are not authentically good for you to prove something to other people. And we can see that what's looking at that heart center, the 44, right, which is basically the fear of not being successful. And the 26 is the egoist, the trickster, the one who exaggerates. So in the past, he has thought that in order to be successful, he needs to lie and exaggerate the truth, as in 1987 when he went to the presidential nomination, and he both plagiarized speeches from Kennedy and Hubert Humphreys and British politicians, copied things that other people of greatness had said, and also lied about the number of college degrees, that he'd been top of his class, that he'd participated in the civil rights movement, and that he'd got a scholarship, which all in part led to him not being very credible and needing to drop out. So I'm sure he learned his lesson there about the limits of exaggeration in order to boost his ego. And the open root center means it's very easy to put pressure on him and to drive him, which Kamala is very good at doing, and she's an insatiable perfectionist as well, with that 58 there. Now we come to the open emotional system, which is basically in the not self, the avoidance of confrontation, truth, and emotions that are difficult to deal with. So he's got all this stuff going on, all this self-oppression, and he doesn't want to have to deal with the consequences of any of his actions, including all the deals. It's quite notable as a fourth line there that he's the senator of Delaware, the corporate capital of America. But I mean, depending on which way you see it, a possible example of this avoidance of difficult emotions was when his first wife and daughter died, and he didn't take the time to fully grieve, but just continued on to be elected as senator. That's only an emotionally open person can do that. And the other thing about the open emotional system is that this is the center both of pain and also pleasure, sexual drive. And so if you understand the open solar plex people, especially with this very moody 55, if you understand what turns them on and what gives them pleasure, you know how to give that to them. You can basically manipulate this whole system. And that brings us on to ice cream, because one of the things with the 55 is the root of more eating disorders than any other. And when that mood drops, it can be very violent and dark. And one of the things that people find helps is sugar. Sugar manipulates your emotional mood and helps you forget the past, give you temporary pleasure. So it can be useful when used with awareness, but let's have a look.
So tell me about Joe and your relationship with Joe, and what do I need to know? Like, what's the thing about the ice cream? He loves ice cream. Tell me about that.
Well, listen, ice cream is big. Pasta with red sauce, he can go deep on that.
What an interesting thing to say, eh? Going deep on pasta with red sauce. I mean, why would you say that? I'll leave that up to you to research what that means, because it does mean something. But it's interesting to see when we look deeper in his chart, his digestion is thirst and hot thirst, which means basically that these people have a system that runs cold, and it's good for them to have plenty of hot drinks. Eating ice cream is not going to be the best thing for him. And we've got his birth time quite accurately. I'm going with 8/17. First determination is interesting because Wim Hof also has this, but the other way around. So for Wim Hof, cold, his system runs very hot, and cold is beneficial for him. Coming back to pasta with red sauce, this 59 is in the channel of intimacy and sexuality. When somebody's got an activation here, they are not in control of the way they come across sexually. And he's got it in the 5th line, which is he can be very seductive, the Casanova or the femme fatale. And it's basically the power to use emotional intimacy, as you can see here, to break down any barrier, to gain power, get higher in the hierarchy. Line 1 is the pursuer or pursued. He's going after, on a conscious level, emotional intimacy and sexuality. And I have to say that given his daughter Ashley's revelations in her diary, confirmed by herself that it was real, and given the arrest of the person who allegedly stole it, I can't help thinking about clients of mine whose fathers have had the 59-1 and who've suffered from childhood abuse. Now, I'm certainly not saying that if you've got the 59-1, that's obviously no line is good or bad, but you could describe it as predatory in the not self. And obviously that isn't the case if you're living it with awareness and respect. But it is something. It's a deep drive to penetrate and basically take advantage of opportunities when we think about it in relation with his profile. But anyway, there have been many issues with him moving into intimacy emotionally and physically very directly, particularly with children in his surroundings.
And by the way, you know, I sit on the stand and it get hot. I got hairy legs that turn turn blonde in the sun. And the kids used to come up and reach in the pool and rub my leg down so it was straight, and then watch the hair come back up again. They'd look at it. So I learned about roaches. I learned about kids jumping on my lap. And I've loved kids jumping on my lap.
Probably repeating something that he's heard somewhere else, but oh yeah, when I see this and things like that, I have serious doubts. And when we look at his daughter, Ashley, the birth time is not known for her, so she could be a generator. But as a projector myself, when you see pictures of her in public, she really stands out in a way that only projectors do, which is quite ironic because they almost always feel like they're invisible and nobody sees them and blah, blah, blah. But actually, they really shine, just like her mother, Jill, also a projector. With this open sacral and what she describes in her diary about her vulnerability sexually and sex addiction, which many people with the open sacral center can relate to. We want to have what we don't have consistently. So that makes sense to me. When we look at Hunter, we can see that, well, he's also got this same channel that runs in the family of confusion, but his profile is very different. A 3-5, the black sheep. I mean, Ashley is a 1-3, which is the most insecure profile. So, you know, I really feel for her vulnerability with so much openness and that profile. But Hunter, you know, the 5th line attracts positive projections and the 3rd line makes a lot of mistakes that he's conscious of and oppressed by. And with this open emotional system, we can see here again the seeking of pleasure, addictions. He's also got this 4th line in this gate of accumulating power and financial security. And so as a 5th line, if you know how to play with the projection field, I mean, in the past, in my not self, I've gotten jobs that I wasn't qualified for just because I looked the part. And he's going to be able to do that with the connections that he has. For example, the role he had as a consultant for Burisma, the natural gas company in Ukraine that Joe has had ties with, that he never actually visited, but somehow was on their payroll. And in this 27 here, you can see the line of greed, the obsession with having much more than one needs. And of course, it's a 3rd line, so it leads to mistakes and getting in trouble in his Saturn, which is where we really get punished by life if we are not living in alignment. There's sapping the strength and power of others, the child depleting the resources of others. We'll see if his parents manage to bail him out this time. So I find the friendship that Joe has with Obama very interesting. They've both got a 6th line in their profile, so they've learned from their mistakes and they're seeking perfection in their own way and to become a role model for the people. And of course, they share this same motivation of hope. So it really makes sense how they've been able to work together in harmony. And of course, Donald Trump also shares this motivation of hope, of faith, of, make America great again. He's very strong, Donald Trump, obviously, as the 45 is the tribal leader. Tight-knit groups of people that will fervently support him, no matter what. That's how the tribe works. Joe simply can't speak to people in that same kind of way. If we look at their connection chart, we can see that Donald Trump compromises Joe in 3 places. He'll win any logical argument, whether those facts are correct or not. And it's really funny, him having this channel and being so outspoken about fake or real details. But the place that Joe wins against Trump and compromises him is here in this channel of discovery, of being in the right place at the right time and being able to take advantage of the opportunities. Both of them can obviously be drawn away from their true motivation of hope into guilt, which you just see all the time, them trying to guilt trip the other and talk about everything that's wrong, and it's such nonsense. Somebody with a true motivation of guilt is able to see what is not working and feels responsible, true responsibility to fix it. But here, all that stuff is just fake. So to summarize, what we see here is somebody that's very friendly, relatable, can achieve emotional intimacy with people, has this universally appealing voice that creates a very strong projection field. And the question as we finish off here is, can we see who's behind that projection screen and which influences, which close friends or corporate connections is he being a mouthpiece for? Because as someone with a history of trauma and a lack of self-worth, feeling of insecurity, he wants to feel good about himself. He wants to have a voice. And if people believe in him and assure him that he won't have to deal with the consequences of whatever he does, I mean, he'll do anything, and he's the perfect puppet. The world is a very messed up place, especially these networks at the top of the social hierarchy. So we can only imagine how he's been taken advantage of in his life. So enjoy the show, the political circus, as Orson Welles very well said. Subscribe and surrender to your own inner authority and truth.